Welcome to the Real Estate Syndication Show. Whether you are a seasoned investor or building a new real estate business, this is the show for you. Whitney Sewell talks to top experts in the business. Our goal is to help you master real estate syndication. And now your host, Whitney Sewell.
This is your daily real estate syndication show. I'm your host, Whitney Sewell. Today, our guest is Craig Napoliello. Thanks for being on the show, Craig.
Thanks so much for having me, Whitney.
No, it's been great to get to know you. I know you and I have had numerous conversations over the last quite a few months now, and pleased to have you on the show and us talk about what you're doing in real estate right now, even with the busy schedule. But a little about Craig. He discovered the unique qualities and opportunities in multifamily real estate in October of 2018. He converted his assets from traditional investments to cash flowing real estate in January of 2019. Has closed on 53 units so far and plan on converting more of his assets and W-2 income into cash flowing real estate before ultimately syndicating deals to help others convert their assets into cash flowing multifamily real estate. So, Craig, thank you again for your time being on the show. Tell the listeners a little more about maybe where you're located and what your focus is right now.
Thanks so much, Whitney. So I live in Brooklyn, New York. I've been in New York now. I moved up here in 2003, right after college, fell in love with it, and have been here ever since. So my wife and myself and our two dogs, we live in Brooklyn, New York. I was basically in traditional finance throughout my career, and I sort of shifted gears about 5 years ago. I wanted to pursue something more sort of entrepreneurial, so I changed course and went from a traditional finance role into a fintech company, which builds basically trading marketplace and software for the financial industry. So as far as the real estate thing goes, that's been an interest of mine in my entire adult life. I was just one of these people that, without even really thinking about it, I would go visit cities and I would look up all the stats on Trulia or Zillow, and would basically over the course of the weekend spend a lot of time trying to get a feel for the underlying fundamentals of a city and the growth areas and the price per square foot and all these sort of important metrics. So through that, I end up sort of dabbling in buying single family real estate over the course of my adult life. That being said, there was no sort of real strategy to it. I did enjoy, in my mind, investing in real estate, and it was something I just did out of enjoyment. I shifted my mindset, as you mentioned, sort of in October of last year. My sister-in-law introduced me to several of the podcasts on real estate, and so I spent a tremendous amount of time, going down deep rabbit holes, listening to your podcast and Bigger Pockets and Wheelbarrow Profits, and learning a lot about these different segments of the real estate market. And it really stood out to me when I started, learning more about them. Basically, just learning enough to sort of be dangerous. I recognized that a lot of the characteristics of multifamily real estate matched up with what I would want for my life going forward, right? Which is that basically, I love my job, which I feel very thankful to be able to say that. So I know there's a lot of material out there and a lot of people talking about almost demonizing like sort of W-2s and spending full time on different things. I love my job and I'm very excited about the prospects of my full-time job and hope to do that for many, many years to come. That being said, I also want to prepare myself and my family, through multifamily real estate to build a passive cash flow stream that if I ever find myself, whether that's in a year, 5 years, or 20 years, if I ever find myself in a position where I don't love going to work, I don't want to feel beholden to my W-2 job and take time away from my family and other things I love doing just because I feel like I need the income stream. So I'm working diligently now to replace my W-2 income with passive real estate income over the coming years.
Nice. So, you talked about how most the W-2 positions are like demonized here, the
Yeah.
JOB, and just over broke. I've heard that so many times. People say that's what JOB stands for, but it's interesting. It's not ever talked about. The people who say want to get into real estate, but they don't want to leave their JOB, or they really enjoy it, and like you do. And so I think it's a great topic. And thinking about, okay, that busy professional that also wants to own some real estate. And just thinking about, okay, well, that seems like a lot to take on, or that seems like a lot to manage. And I think you could speak well to, okay, how to, getting started in real estate, especially in large multifamily, while also, like not planning on leaving your day job. So it's like, okay, I'm going to take this other thing on over here on the side that I know is very beneficial, but it's going to require a lot of my time. What did that look like in the beginning for you?
Hmm. That's a great question. Well, the first thing I did that, before before I could really set forth with the game plan, I started off by doing, a very thorough analysis of my whole financial life. And I uncovered a lot of things, one of which being that I was being inefficient with my assets. Now, again, this is coming from someone I sort of have I would say my financial literacy is stronger than the average person. I was in finance my entire career. So, but I think that I'd say it's pretty normal, right? I mean, people just get in the routine of their day-to-day lives, and you're not really spending the time to drill down on, what's my income, what are my expenses, where are my assets, and basically what are my assets doing for me. This a huge sort of like rich dad poor dad thing. Like all of my the assets that I have, are they are they working as hard for me as I'm working for them? So that's this whole journey for me began with me having a real serious look in the mirror about what my about my assets, and again sort of my balance sheet, my personal balance sheet. Once I had a better understanding of what was working well and what wasn't working well, I then set forth to convert some of my assets into cash flowing real estate. The educational piece was a huge part of it. As I mentioned, that's such an amazing thing about pursuing like this in 2019 going on 2020, is that all this material is available, right? Someone can go on to your podcast, and I've listened to dozens and dozens of episodes on your podcast, and over the course of hours and days, or a couple weeks, you can get a good understanding, start identifying markets, and taking the steps towards approaching real estate in a way that you're comfortable with. I think that it's important as well to sort of set your intentions, like really why are you doing this? Because it's not going to be easy. So if you don't have like a real strong sort of why or reason behind why you're trying to do this, chances are that you are going to that it dissipate, right? You are going to have hit bumps in the road. So when you hit those bumps in the road, is your why strong enough to help you sort of power through that? The mindset thing, right? As far as I mentioned, I purchased some single family homes over the course of my adult life. I got lucky. I bought those single family homes as an investment. I thought in my mind, market, right, which makes everybody look smart. The reality of it is that to approach this in the format that I'm talking about, and like the way that you do, and anyone that's sort of a serious investor, is that you have to approach it like a business, right? You have to have you can't just sort of like fall into this. You have to set forth a strategy that is, well thought out and consistent, that you can follow. Otherwise, you're sort of like, you're putting your assets up to luck, which I wouldn't suggest. Also recognizing that you are going to make mistakes, right? So basically, as approaching this, in my mind, I was almost like, I think people are concerned about making mistakes. You're going to make them. That's the reality, right? So if you are reluctant to take action because you think you may make mistakes, you have to completely shift your mindset. I mean, I think I would almost encourage to lean into the mistakes, because if you are making mistakes, providing you're learning from them, you are accelerating your learning curve, right? I would also say, which is a very important point, and I just not too long ago read The One Thing, and they talk about blocking off time and scheduling. And I'm sure that you must be very good at that, based on all the things that you do in your business and the podcasting, the syndication. is that if this is important to you, I guess one is evaluate your life and schedule time for yourself that is not also going to, you have to be realistic, right? I schedule my time, for example, on Monday nights and Saturdays. And I do that because my wife works on Saturdays, and then, Monday nights, we don't have any children yet. If you have 3 kids, I mean, scheduling your real estate planning on a Saturday is probably not going to work, right? So it's a matter of being realistic of like, what's your life and how can you work on this if it's a priority for you without throwing your entire life into chaos, right? So that you can get behind it, as well as your spouse and your family and everyone else that is supporting you can get behind it, right? You have to just be realistic about what your life looks like. And then the last thing I would say is that, again, because especially someone with a W-2 has limited time, is devoting time to establishing and fostering relationships with people that can help you grow your business. And by that, I mean mentors. And I have a mentor, and brokers and property managers and other trusted experts in your field, right? So that you are basically not just using your time that's available to grow your business, but you're also using their time.
You mentioned so many great things there. I was taking notes, but this time management piece is such a big deal. And I mean, along with the mindset and the strategy, numerous things that you mentioned, and being willing to make mistakes. But I found, like, personally, I mean, the time management piece, like having my calendar, having it structured, these days of the weeks, this times, this is what's happening. Being very consistent with that. Then also, where I've found it difficult is like where I'm always pushing, to keep, to get to the next deal or get this done, and doing the podcast, all these things. Well, the whole reason we're doing all this, like to be able to spend more time with family or whatever that may be, that kind of gets pushed to the sideline while we're, pushing this career over here. And so, I've found, and I haven't mastered this by no means, but it's like, even with the family, it's like, okay, if they know that these times of the week, like, is just for them, like, that makes the rest of the week a lot easier.
Yeah.
Especially with kids, they know that, but my wife as well, it's like, okay, we're going to have this time, so if it's a few long days in a row, as long as they know that time is coming, it's been very helpful. But I just wonder about yourself, like, like you said, like, okay, I think you said like Mondays and Saturdays or something, but there's a time where you're like planning your week. Is that right?
That's absolutely right. And I hear, just listening to material from people like yourself who are very successful in real estate that have children, you often hear, people with children. I've heard people that wake up at, 4 a.m, right? And 4 to 7, that's their quiet time. That's when they're, focusing on pushing the business forward, because they know that's what fits for their life. That's when they're sort of uninterrupted. And I sort of, again, all these things only work with very accurate introspection. You have to really, look at, again, this took me sort of accurately evaluating all my assets and my income and balance sheet. And now then sort of accurately evaluating, being honest with myself, like, what's my life look like, and where can I block off time that's going to work for, me and my wife, and then, whoever else is an important part of your life.
Wow. Yes. And so what about the mindset portion?
Something says,
What would you say was the biggest factor in helping you get just the mindset of just, okay, I'm going to make this happen. Even, I think even the mindset of recognizing you're going to make mistakes, and being willing to know that's going to happen, but know that that's part of the process. Like, how did you become okay with that and get your mind right?
So I have to say, and I feel very fortunate, is that in general, I'd say I'm a confident person, and I'm not, making mistakes is not something that's something that in general scares me. Also, I realize that the only alternative to making mistakes is basically not taking any action. And that wasn't, you have to sort of decide for yourself. The only way that you're not going to make mistakes is by not taking any action. So is that an outcome that you can live with? And that's just not something that I wanted to do. And again, I mean, I almost, turned it to the point where I'm looking forward, to mistakes, because they are certain, they're going to happen. There's no avoiding them. If you wait they're still going to happen. If you go small or big or anywhere in between, they're going to happen. So, I think that as well, I think it's very important, because if you go into it thinking there are going to be mistakes, all the things, like when you listen to podcasts and material that you put out, and you which is, I'm so grateful for, because I can go on your podcast and listen to the experiences of all these successful professionals before me. And when they talk about, these worst case scenarios, and I bought this building and it burned down, and the roof leaked, and all, I had a bad tenant, and this dog bit somebody. Yeah, and you want to think that's not going to happen to me. It is certainly going to happen to you, right? So I think it's an important thing, just to basically again, and a lot of these things are just being honest with if you go into this, all those things, some variation of those incidents are going to occur to you. The important thing is, though, they happen to everyone. To some people, when those things happen, it stops them in their tracks. So it's a matter of, and I think that, like, when they, I've had some, bad things happen to me, already, right? It's in the past 6 months. And I was basically waiting for them, so when they happen, when I got these calls, I wasn't in a, I would have preferred they did not happen. When I got the call from my property manager, I didn't think to myself, or I didn't feel any sense of how could this be happening to me. It was a matter of, like, when is this going to happen to me? And then, sort of planning ahead for that. Do I have the right team in place that can handle these problems? When I had the biggest problem that I've dealt with so far, my property manager dealt with it so well. I'm sure that it was basically on the verge of an emergency, and it didn't, on this side of the telephone, it did not feel like an emergency, right? They're excellent at their jobs. They're professionals. They manage our relationship and our communication well. So that is, that's a great lesson itself. All these things are going to happen to you. Do you have the right team in place and the trusted partners in place that are going to help you get through these things?
Wow, I couldn't agree with that more, Craig. Yeah, those team members are so crucial, are so important. But taking a shift a little bit, a few questions before we run out of time. But now that you've been a part of a few syndications, and what's been the hardest part of this syndication journey for you?
So I have not syndicated any of my deals. I've done them myself, but I have invested in a syndication. And I think the most important thing for me is that, again, I feel very fortunate, and I would feel the same approaching you about one of your deals, is to really, get to know the people that are doing those deals. The one syndication that I invested in, I was lucky enough to know the general partners of that deal. So I had no apprehension. I saw the way they've conduct themselves, personally, professionally, leading up to that. So when it came time to make that investment, and I looked at the deal, it just, it felt right, and I felt so comfortable doing that. So for anyone that has the opportunity to, to really vet and get to know, and I think that it's so amazing that you have your podcast and you are so accessible, because, again, for, like, if I were to do one of your deals, I would have, zero apprehension. I wouldn't be tentative at all about, the quality of person that I'm investing in, which is a huge part of it. Because again, same thing, as successful as you've been, things are going to go wrong. So it's like, do I trust you? Are you going to communicate well with me? How are you going to handle this? Are you going to handle these situations with integrity? And obviously the answer to all those things is yes. And that's really the most important thing, I think, when approaching these deals.
No doubt about it. Yeah, the integrity piece. So tell me how you plan to, or how you're preparing for this potential downturn that everybody's talking about.
So I feel very confident heading into a potential downturn, because I'm focused on, let's say, sort of B and C class value add stuff. For me personally, again, this is to each their own, but there are some markets that that have sort of A class properties at 3.5 caps and 4 caps. And I live in, Brooklyn and, New York. So I'm very familiar with how tight the cap rates are in some of these markets. So I'm just nuts investing in those, right? Because again, my main goal is cash flow, right? But well above anything else, is my goal is to establish, the largest passive cash flow stream possible. So for each dollar I'm investing, I'm mostly evaluating what return am I getting on that dollar. And this is not where can I, purchase a deal and then basically exit this deal in 2 years based on current cap rates, right? I'm looking for, sort of very, very long-term hold. So with that being the case, and again, I'm trying to set myself up with, for example, long-term financing. So that I'm hopefully never a forced seller, that I can, I'm almost like agnostic to, especially if it's within let's say a 10-15% band up or down in the, say in the markets. I'm investing as though I want to be agnostic in what the market does. I mean, part of me almost like wishes that if things came off a little bit, that would, benefit me so that it would be easier to buy stuff.
Sure. So, tell me though, what's a way you've recently improved your business that we could apply to ours?
So from my experience, I would say the most powerful lever is property management. And I'm sure you can tell already, I'm thrilled with the property management company that I'm using. And, I think that is the most valuable lever in the business. And really that is what is setting a tone for the business, for your customer engagement, sort of living out the core values and principles, of your business. Those people are the front line when facing your customers, right? So I really sort of can't stress enough, sort of how important that is. And this is now just because I had a property manager that was less effective, and now I have one that I am finding, very effective. And to see how they're interacting with people, to seeing how they are extracting equity and delivering value to our customer base, right, in different ways. For me, again, there are so many important people, brokers and lawyers and accountants, and so many different people, and it's you want to have the best of all of them. But so far for me, having a very effective property manager has been, I think, the most powerful thing for me in my business.
Very important team member, no doubt about it. So what's been the number one thing that's contributed to your success?
I would say sort of overall, and then sort of applied to real estate, is really is persistence. And I remember this my entire life as a child. I remember my dad saying to me that perseverance is omnipotence. And if you don't give up and you keep at it, you will succeed. So I think that by far, and again, this is I'm trying to apply this to my real estate business, but this has definitely served me well throughout my life and career. And I think that, which is amazing, because I think that sort of the most important qualities, again, you don't need to have gates, right, to be persistent. So I think it's a great thing that I think about sort of every day as I conduct myself in life and in business. And of course, you want to do it with grace, again, being persistent and following through, and sticking with things. I think that's the most important ingredient for this business and really any business.
And how do you like to give back?
So we give back, my wife and I. So my wife had, and she's healthy now, she's been disease-free for 5 years. My wife had stage 4 melanoma, and she was treated by Memorial Sloan Kettering. And when she had the greatest experience there, they took such great care of her and nursed her back to health, and she's doing phenomenally well now. So Memorial Sloan has, of course, a special place in our heart, so we give back that way. And I'm on the board of a animal shelter here in New York City. We have 2 rescue dogs, and the name of the animal shelter is Animal Haven.
Nice.
So.
Craig, well, I appreciated your time and you sharing with myself and the listeners, and just your, you getting into the real estate business while working full time. And that's not easy, just the time management piece alone, and just knowing, or just going into it with the correct mindset and knowing that the mistakes are going to come, and you even talked about devoting time to fostering the right relationships, and all that takes time, but it's an interesting spin on it, that you love your job and you don't plan to leave, while the majority of the industry that are getting started are kind of the opposite. And so I just appreciate the different take on that, and being able to do this while also working full time, and the success you've had. But tell the listeners how they can get in touch with you.
The listeners can get a hold of me. But my email it's my full name, Craig Napoliello, CraigNapoliello @gmail.com. CraigNapoliello@gmail.com.
Thank you for listening to the Real Estate Syndication Show, brought to you by Life Bridge Capital. Life Bridge Capital works with investors nationwide to invest in real estate, while also donating 50% of its profits to assist parents who are committing to adoption. Life Bridge Capital, making a difference, one investor and one child at a time. Connect online at www.lifebridgecapital.com for free material and videos to further your success.